right. We'll get started. We'll just let people in as they come. I know you guys are on your lunch breaks, most of you, and we want to make sure that we get to cover all of our content today. We got some really great stuff, amazing resources for you, especially for those of you who are running food programs in your center. This will be a really good session for you, I think, today. So good morning, good afternoon, I guess, depending on where you're coming from. Today we are here again for our child-friendly lunch and learn. We have Wayne joining us, so if anybody has any questions around process, admin support, any kind of software questions, he'll be here to take those from you. We also are very grateful today to have Eve joining us to talk about some nutrition and how you guys can really support regulation and proper nutrition in your centers. Eve is from the Green Sheep, one of her many hats that she wears, but she is here to really support food education for schools, for parents, if you're looking at maybe a parent workshop in your center, or just a nutrition workshop for your kids in your program. She'll be able to answer kind of how she can support you with that, and talk a lot about holistic nutrition today, reframing kind of your perspective on health and nutrition and well-being. So with that being said, we'll get right into it and get started. Like any of our lunch and learns, we're very grateful to ChildFriendly for hosting these and helping us make sure that they're in front of you every month with different resources. Today's topic is supporting regulation at the table. And just our always disclaimer, we're not here to represent any kind of licensing or regulations. It's really just an operator to operator kind of information session, give you some practical guidance and supports so you can offer the best quality of care possible in your centers. Our agenda for today, this is what we'll be covering. We're going to start with why nutrition and feeding challenges matter. We'll talk about what we're seeing in childcare right now. We'll look at some data and how common it really is. Then we're going to hand it over to Eve to talk about the Green Sheep project and what she can bring kind of a holistic approach to feeding our kids in our centers and that regulation component. And then we'll connect really this practice to kind of some tools and practical resources before we wrap up for questions. Like the other lunch and learns, please feel free to use the chat throughout. We'll do our best to answer your questions. If you have questions, you can put your hand up. We're happy to take them either throughout or at the end of the presentation. So really kicking this off, why does it matter? Why are we here today in childcare talking about food and nutrition? Food is really more than nutrition, it's regulation. What happens at the table, at your snack or your lunch times in your center impacts the whole entire day. For children, regulation really starts with stable energy and feeling safe with food. Feeding challenges can lead to stress, anxiety, missed nutrition, which really kind of snowballs into poor nutrition that decreases or increases dysregulation, fatigue, and frustration. For our educators, we're seeing more challenging behaviors throughout our whole system, but during and after meals are often difficult times in our day, and increased stress and uncertainty on how to respond to those behavior challenges and dysregulation. We're seeing inconsistent approaches across staff, so we'll talk a little bit about why it's so important to be consistent. And for your program, why this matters today is having inconsistent approaches across staff creates challenges, creates burnout, extra stress that we don't need. Meal times really set the tone for the day, and the food impacts your children's participation, their learning, their social connection. So this is kind of high level of why it matters. I know I get the opportunity to tour a lot of our centers across Calgary and different parts of Alberta, and seeing what children are eating a lot of times is concerning for me. I've seen some really amazing food programs in-house, but also some where people are really lacking kind of that understanding of nutrition and why it matters so much for the bigger picture of regulation in our centers. The good news is we can provide some small changes, I think, today that really can help to reduce those daily challenges across your whole program and support both feeding needs and nutrition quality so that hopefully we can guide you to having creating a calmer, more successful environment for yourself, for your staff, for your children in your care. Two of the challenges that we're seeing kind of at the same time in childcare. So we're seeing both feeding challenges with children struggling with textures, anxieties, maybe limited food. Maybe this is on something that is undiagnosed, or we're just trying to figure out what's happening. But it definitely adds to the stressfulness of our meal times in our programs, and how our staff are dealing with it and how competent they're feeling in responding. And then we're seeing the nutrition gaps, without eating a variety of food or high nutrition food. You're seeing high sugar, low protein meals, processed or low variety menus, and meals that really don't support or sustain energy for the whole day. This is what feeding challenges look like. And I think Eve will be able to definitely be more of our expert around some of this, but I wanted to give you something to start with here. If feeding challenges are not the exception, they're really the norm, especially in our neurodivergent populations. Depending on the kids that you have in care, you may see this more or less than others. But seeing really limited range of food that the children are comfortable eating, strong reactions to textures or smells or how food is presented, even like physical gagging or distress or anxiety around meal times, difficulty staying at the table, and needing food to be predictable or just right in order to be interested in it. Behind these behaviors, we're often seeing sensory differences, anxiety, or a need for control, not defiance. I wanted to put a graph up here for you just so you could see that it is absolutely a large population of our neurodivergent children that struggle with some of these challenges. I also wanted to kind of show how food directly impacts how children function during the day and in our program. When nutrition really supports regulation, you'll have that steady energy and attention, fewer emotional highs and lows, greater participation at meals. I mean, we all know when we've not had enough food for the day or not eaten well, how much it impacts our mood and our mindset and our wellness overall. So this really shows, how high that dysregulation is for different types of food. Again, Eve is here for the expert of this. This was just some kind of idea for you to have of why this really matters to us in our programs. We don't want to see those energy spikes and crashes, the increased in irritability and dysregulation. We want to reduce those behaviors so our staff are able to manage the classrooms, and we're not adding to kind of that burnout and stress that we're seeing across our educators right now. So what actually helps? That's what we're going to talk about after this slide. This is complex. It's a difficult issue. It's really not something that I see talked about a lot in our industry. We spend a lot of time talking about, different aspects and challenges that we face as educators and operators, but we don't often talk about, the nutrition and how we're feeding the children in our programs, or how we're supporting parents in making sure the children are fed well coming into the center for the day, or what they're provided for food, and the lasting impact that really has on the whole child and the whole program throughout the day. So at this point, I was trying to talk as fast as I can so I can give as much time to Eve. I want to welcome Eve to talk to everyone here today. Like I mentioned, Eve has amazing resources. She covers a lot of different industries across the board with her holistic approach to nutrition and wellness. I'm excited to hear about your Green Sheep project and maybe how other centers can look at bringing something around that into their program for parents, and maybe even for their educators or their food programs. So with that, I'm going to stop talking and hand it over to you, Eve. Thank you for being here.
Awesome. Thanks, Crystal. Thanks for having me. And I'm going to just load up my presentation here. Let me know. Can you see the opening slide there?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. So Crystal introduced me, holistic nutritionist, very passionate about food, health, our well-being, our growth, and our experience of life. We live in a world today where who could have imagined what life would be like and how disconnected we are from each other and from nature. And so my approach is very biological, it's very nature focused, and it's aligned with how we were actually designed, our ancestral architecture of our brains and our bodies. Yes, we've evolved, but there's some fundamental things that we still need. And food is one of these beautiful things that we kind of get disconnected with. So one of our signature talks is called Why You Should Eat the Ugly Carrot. These are actual carrots that were grown in our garden. They sometimes look like that. Kids think they're really fun and they taste super, super good versus the little shaved ones that are bleached and swimming in some type of liquid preservative that for myself upsets my tummy every time I eat one of them. So that to me is a sign that there's something unnatural here. But let's dive in and going to talk to you about let's see if I can get this working. Here we go. Unlearning. So for me, it's all about unlearning and relearning. So what we've been told and questioning everything. And of course, my approach is to do it with kindness and grace. And so we need to start letting go of old habits, of beliefs and knowledge, and get space in our minds for new ideas and new perspectives, and questioning all the assumptions that we've been told and be open to new ways of thinking. And so what we want to do is reframe that deeply ingrained belief or habit. And it's not just around food. I would challenge us to look at that in all aspects of our life to see whose belief is it? Is it actually ours, or is it through our conditioning, our programming, our upbringing, all of these things that have influenced us over the years? And so like to start off with a little quiz, but you don't need to have to answer them. This is just kind of for yourselves to play along to see if you knew some of these fun facts. And that is, so what is the fourth largest crop in the world? Okay, so you might start be thinking about what they are. So the first one is corn. The second one is rice. The third one is wheat. So you might be thinking, okay, got those maybe not in the same order. The fourth one, my bet is going to be, you're going to be shocked. It's bananas. The fourth largest crop in the world is bananas. And saw Crystal's eyebrows go up, so she was a little surprised. If you really want to go down a rabbit hole, there's a link between the CIA and bananas and how that became a business and why we have it globally and stuff. And so it's just fascinating because all these things we never know that are really, really hard to find. You almost have to like look under rocks and stuff to find it. But that's where my digging comes in to play around. So what food has the most potassium? Orange, banana, sardines, or avocado? So B is probably going to be a common choice, but it's actually avocado. So many people think of bananas, they think of potassium, right? Oh, eat more bananas. That's, again, if we look at the last slide, the connection to how it's, the fourth largest crop, why it is, still working on that, but avocado has more potassium than bananas. So a 5-ounce banana has roughly 358 milligrams, and avocado has 728 milligrams of potassium. So again, just kind of, who's been telling us this and why, and what sticks in our minds, right? And what comes top of mind? This one to me is really important to see these signs in the neighborhood in terms of pesticide use, right? So pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, how long can they stay in the body? Is it 3 months? Is it 10 years? Is it 12 months? Or is it 3 years? Shockingly, it's 10 years. So when the stuff is sprayed on our lawns, when it's sprayed in public areas, when it's sprayed in parks and in schools, and our pets and our children, and we go in there and we play and we roll around and it gets on our bodies and we actually grow food in these areas and we ingest it, it can stay up to 10 years in our bodies, which is a little concerning when you think about, okay, well, what's the long-term effect? Has anyone done any studies? There's an interesting book called Silent Spring by Rachel Carson, and that's a beautiful read that can give you a lot more insight into chemicals, pesticide use, farming, what's happened to our land, and how they use these chemicals and don't really tell us why or how, and then we just have to accept it. But it talks about now we've got longer term information of what happens and what are the impacts to us. So citric acid. Where does citric acid come from? Unsure if you've read ingredients labels and seen that that's an ingredient that's very, very common. And so does it come from oyster shells, citrus fruits, genetically modified mold, or acid, right? It is an acid. Well, the answer is it comes from genetically modified mold. Before the 1970s, citric acid came from citrus. And that's actually where it does come from, is from citrus fruits. And in the 70s, they made a discovery from GMO mold. And that's what we get now because it's consistent, it's easily manufactured, and it's very, very, very cost effective to be able to create something in a lab versus actually use the raw material for it. So if it's not organic and it has citric acid in it, chances are it comes from genetically modified mold. Yucky. How much beef does Canada import? Right? We live in Alberta. We've got lots of cattle ranches and beef. So how much do we import actually? Is it 10%? Is it 20%, 45%, or over 55%? You wouldn't think it, but more than 55% of our beef is imported, and it's very difficult because tracking a cow where it was originally auctioned, how many times it crosses a border, and then where it's sold back as an end product is ridiculous. Like, I don't even know how this commodity market works, but it is very, very, very confusing. And we'll talk about why it's important that I'm bringing this up. So what we want to do is look at how does all these things that maybe we were told and maybe we were believing affect us the most? And one of the biggest ways is our health. And so when we look at setting the foundation of health, like to look at 4 pillars: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. Right? So there's 4 sort of pillars of our health that we need to look at. And so when we talk about health, well, what is it? So it says that health is a state of physical, mental, emotional, social, and spiritual well-being, and not merely the absence of disease. If you look at a dictionary definition, it'll tell you that health is the absence of something. That to me is very confusing because not something is not really informative about what it is. And in some cultures, health and harmony are considered the same, where harmony is being defined as being at peace with yourself and the community. And, up until like I've been doing this for close to 20 years. And so for 15 years, my belief was, 80-20. Let's look at 80%, doing the right thing of what's right for us, and then 20% not worrying about it. But the more and more the world changes and the more and more has been in mainstream and reading and just sampling life, it's now more closer to 100% about like, wow, once I know better, I can do better. And I think that's important for all of us to have our own responsibility to know things versus relying so much on external sources for that. And so our food supply, unfortunately, contains more and more poisons and carries less nutrition than any other time in history. So just let that sink in. It contains more toxins and poisons than in any other time in history, right? And so we're being told what to eat and what to drink everywhere we turn. We have a choice. We can choose to be healthy. We can take that control and responsibility back. And what's really sad is that we have been poisoning ourselves by our own hand. No one's force feeding us. We're doing this to ourselves, right? And so this has to stop. And the biggest way that we can make an impact with our health is around our food. So we all eat. That's a way that we're all connected, right? We all have food. We enjoy food. Food is very emotional. We love preparing food in our household. We talk about food all the time and the nuances of what food is. So let's ask ourselves, what actually is food? Because that definition seems to be gone out the window. Most of the time, it's something that people eat, animals eat, plants absorbs to keep them alive. That's very basic, right? And so it also consists of, proteins, carbs, fats used in the body and in organisms to sustain growth and to repair and to sustain vital processes for our energy, right? So food is something we consume to keep us alive, but it's also much more than that. So for us, food is wholesome. It comes from the earth, so from nature, and it remains wholesome, and it evokes all of our senses, and it gives us energy and vitality and health. Real food is healthy. It comes from healthy soil, not from a box or from a plastic wrapper. And it's nutritious and it nourishes us. And the nourishment is essential for growth and life, right? So you are what you eat. Everything it made up is what we put in our mouths, right? And so this is a beautiful quote from Michael Pollan, who says that if you eat foods made from ingredients that you can picture in their raw state, or growing in nature. That's really important to know, right? Like if you can picture the apple or the carrot versus can you picture the cookie or the Dorito or the marshmallow, right? Like, oh, where can you find those in nature? Not to say that they don't satisfy our sweet craving, but we'll talk about why those are caution foods. And so we've really shifted from eating whole foods to convenience foods, most which I call frankenfoods. They're loaded with anti-nutrients, things that are actually bad for us. And so food empowerment actually involves seeing beyond the labels of food and into how these parts build functional cellular health. Like every tiny cell in our body, in our brains, our skin, our eyes, our organs is made up of food, right? So we're taught that genes are our destiny. That's actually untrue. Our genes will not determine our health outcomes. What we eat, how we live, what we think, our cellular biology determines our outcomes, right? And food and the structure and function of ourselves and what's in our guts, in our microbiome, right? So we're eating food based on convenience and cravings versus the need for basic health, right? We're talking about things like sugar, not having time, looking at commodities. And my mission is to get us back on track and eating foods where we know where they came from and knowing that simple is best, not always easy. And so talk a little bit about processed versus ultra processed food. And this slide really shows that, there used to be just processed food. Now we have this term called ultra processed. So you have the food in its natural state, right? Whether it's the corn, the potato, the carrot. Then when you process it, it's moving it into something edible, usually like, so it's canned corn, it's prepared, it's a baked potato, carrot juice, we make flour. And then the ultra processed is, the things that start to look similar in color, that beige color, right? The corn chips, the French fries, the carrot cake, the cookies. And so when we look at different processed foods, they're processed to increase their durability, right? And their sensory qualities. So they combine processed foods with culinary ingredients to make them palatable, right? So the easiest way to identify a processed food is looking at an ingredient list, right? So you're looking for things like oils, you're looking for salt, sugar on the label. If you pick up an apple, there probably isn't a label because it's just an apple, right? And so most processed foods can be problematic because they include high levels of sugar, salt, oil, right? So ketchup, salad dressing, peanut butter. So looking at avoiding processed foods and refined foods with seed oils or added sugar or any ingredients that not a recognizable food, and on labels today, there's lots of them, is something to be aware of, right? When we talk about ultra processed food, again, you can see these beige colors start to show up instead of the vibrant, rich colors in nature. These are created in industrial factories, right? So they combine various extracted food and adulterated parts from different foods with lots of synthetic ingredients like preservatives and food colorings. And they comprise so many of our calories today, which is really unfortunate because, again, it looks at that convenience aspect. And manufacturers break down whole foods into parts, right? And they often combine them with these synthetic parts, and then they add shelf-stable chemicals, and then it's a processed food that can last on the shelf for goodness, who knows how long, right? And these foods are considered normal in our culture, where from me, we should avoid them as much as possible. They also have a huge environmental impact. They're packaged, right? They're stored in plastic or other materials that have to go to landfills. Yes, there's some recycling, but that's a whole other topic if we talk about how much of that stuff is actually being recycled and how much actually ends up in the landfill. And so most of these are also made from conventionally grown crops. So what happens in a conventional commodity crop market is they decimate the health of our soil and the environment. There are lots of fertilizers added to it. So there's so many layers and elements that go into processed foods. And when we talk about being so busy, that's our choice. We're doing it to ourselves. And so busy being on the go, putting the kids in the car, rushing, making sure they have something to eat. Sometimes that results in grabbing something that's packaged, right? But if we can stock things that are packaged in their own containers, like bananas or apples or any fruits that are whole, and just use those as go-to snacks, that would be much better, right? So interesting fact about the banana, once they started labeling a banana and branding it, right? So now we have, who knows how many brands we have, like Chiquita was the original. We have Del Monte. There's probably another one that I'm missing, but that became a business. So that's why bananas became so prevalent and they became a business, because they were branded, right? Chiquita banana, there were commercials, there are all these things. It's like, not bad. That's still a good food to eat. It comes in its own package that is biodegradable, but keeping those things in mind as to what's going on. And so don't really consider these foods because they're actually not. There's so many anti-nutrients in them. It's not real food. And so we want to take a look at, also would say, if I look at that picture, 99% of them all have sugar. And that's another conversation around how much sugar is and everything that we're going to dive into briefly here. But do you know how many teaspoons of sugar are actually in one can of Coke? And let's be honest, who drinks cans of pop anymore, right? There's those larger bottles now, the 500 milliliters. There's, you go to the 7-Eleven or any fast food place, those cups are way bigger than a can. So a can of Coke has 10 teaspoons of sugar. So that's 41 grams. So if you were to measure out, and we do this in the classroom with kids, measuring out 10 teaspoons of sugar, it is a tremendous amount of sugar. And so, wow, why are we eating all of this sugar, and what has happened over the years? If you look at when sugar actually was introduced in the 1500s, look at the increase on this graph of how our consumption of sugar has skyrocketed. There's been a 30% increase over the last 3 decades, so the last 30 years. So now the average person eats 1 cup or a half a pound of sugar a day. Let that sink in. A half a cup of sugar a day, most days. So it's hidden in everything, and it's sneaky in terms of how it shows up. Our daughter came home one day. She had gone out with a friend, and the parents took her to Starbucks. We won't have that conversation, but she comes home with this tall chai cherry iced beverage, and out of curiosity looked it up. This big, our daughter was 12 teaspoons of sugar. She was so sick after having that, because we generally don't eat not refined sugars at home, and she crashed, and her mood swings, it was awful. It was a terrible experiment, and she's off of that for now, because she knows exactly how her body was unable to handle that high quantity. And so here's just a few of illnesses that are showing up from sugar. Like, to me, it's absolutely crazy how all of these can have a dotted line or a straight connection to sugar. And when we look at sugar in our body, it affects all of our organs internally. And sometimes it's, out of sight, out of mind. Our bodies are resilient. We adapt. We start to feel yucky, and we think that that is normal. Just because it's common does not make it normal. Okay, I want you to remember that is things that are happening to us, we need to start questioning and really taking ownership about, right? So the sugar affects us in so many different ways. We want to make sure that we're aware of what it's going to do to our children, right? It's particularly damaging for them because it displaces all the nutrients that they're getting from good food like meat, butter, eggs, cheese, all healthy fats that they need for their growth and development. It sets them up for diseases in adulthood. Fatty liver disease is showing up in children now, not from alcohol consumption, which is traditionally how it shows up, from sugar. In the US, 18% have fatty liver disease, and close to 30% are pre-diabetic children because of the amount of sugar that they're consuming. When we look at diagnoses like ADHD, oftentimes there is not a conversation around how much sugar are children eating versus diagnosing them with unable to be sitting still and they're hyper or their attention is elsewhere. Well, let's look at their nutrition. Let's look at what else in the environment is causing that before we can just label and identify something so quickly. And if a child is drinking a can of Coke, they're consuming as much sugar in one sitting as they would have in a whole year if we were 150 years ago. A whole year versus what they're consuming in one day. That is so terrifying in the way that we just slow drip every year to having more sugar. And sugar is one of the biggest untruths that we've been swallowing, and it's been getting worse because it is in everything. And so this is a fun one. Name that food. So here's a list of ingredients: corn syrup, sugar, dextrose, modified food starch, water, gelatin, natural and artificial flavor, tetrasodium pyrophosphate, and blue one. That should give you the hint. Blue one. What is this food? Any guesses? Any guesses? Well, I'll tell you what it is. Marshmallow. So popular amongst kids and some adults, right? Who doesn't remember the s'mores by the fire? But what is in this thing? So first of all, blue one. So it's used in marshmallows to make it more white. Huh? That makes zero sense to me. So first of all, it's a synthetic dye. It comes from tar coal, yucky, and the associated health considerations are neurotoxicity, hyperactivity in children, allergic reactions, organ damage, fertility problems, genetic defects. Yee! Tetrasodium pyrophosphate. What is that? Well, it's used in household and industrial cleaning compounds. It's as a water softener, as a metal cleaner, as a food additive, and for oil well drilling. Oh, and of course in marshmallows to improve its jelliness, right? Because they're so fun and squishy. So it's like an emulsifier or a thickening agent. And then corn syrup. Corn syrup is worse than sugar. It's made by a process that converts starch, so the glucose, into a form of sugar, which is the fructose, that the body can't use very well. It's associated with liver damage, obesity, developmental problems in growing children. And so they did a study on rats, and high fructose corn syrup diets in rats end up with livers those that look like alcoholics, and they're unable to reproduce. And so unfortunately, the FDA gave the food industry permission to label high fructose corn syrup as fructose. Thank you, right? So again, these untruths that we're not told. And the more and more we see of these, the more terrifying it is. So want to talk a little bit about some things that are on labels and why they're a big deal. Because my husband and I always talk about this death by 1,000 cuts, right? Oh, but there's only a little bit in it. Oh, there's only a little bit. But if there's a little bit in absolutely everything you're eating, every meal of every day for your whole life, it's got to add up, right? And so these little things, because they're so foreign to the body, make a significant impact. So flavorings, artificial flavors. So just to run over kind of some nuances here. These are chemical mixtures that are made up of synthetic, so not natural ingredients. They're made in a lab. There's a whole distillation, chemical manipulation of various chemicals, such as crude oil, coal tar. And so they're made from different substances to make this flavor. So artificial vanilla flavor can be made from wood pulp. Artificial flavors, chemists can make anything taste like a strawberry without having any strawberry in it, or actual food for that matter, which is a really horrible thing if you think about it and you value your health. But it's a great thing for food manufacturers because artificial flavors are much cheaper than using real food or even natural flavors, and they're consistent. right? So they manufacture it, it's way easier, it's cheaper. It's all about following the money and looking at it as a business, not in terms of our health and well-being. Then you've got natural flavors, right? So natural flavors can show up, and this term has been highly misleading. So companies own these proprietary formulas, and so it's impossible to really know what's in them. So you'd think that like natural apple flavor would be from an apple, right? And inserted into the food. The actual natural apple flavor needs to be preserved and it needs to be stabilized, and it has agents added to help mix it well into the product because it might not blend depending on what the product is. And so these products, these natural flavors, can contain upwards of 100 ingredients like propylene glycol, polysorbate 80, BHT, BPA, like BHA, all considered incidental additives, as they call it. So because they're an incidental additive, they're not required to be labeled by the FDA. So you can just put them in as a mystery ingredient and it's in our food. They're practically the same as artificial flavors, but it's derived from substances that can be found in nature. So it's derived from natural things, but it's important to remember that that's not all it contains. So flavors contain preservatives, emulsifiers, solvents, these incidental additives, which can make up to 80% or so of the formulation. Some other things are, sodium benzoate, glycerin, potassium sorbate, propylene glycol. Why are these foods? These are not foods, right? They are things to preserve food because real food spoils, and it should. That's how nature designed it. So chemists create these formulas and they isolate them in the lab. And we need to understand that if they're not organic, they can also be made from genetically modified foods or genetically modified organisms, right? They can come from substances in nature. So in some cases, there was a study done where you can take some castoreum, which is like some of the oil from a beaver, to make the flavoring resemble that of a raspberry. So without ever using any raspberries. But the good news is it's from nature, right? So it's natural. It's from a beaver. Oh my goodness. Then we've got natural insert flavor, right? Natural cinnamon flavor, natural blueberry flavor. This means that the flavor is derived solely from that fruit, the vegetable or the animal or the plant, which in this case is cinnamon. But it also is something that didn't come from a different food source. So in the other example, like you could get castoreum from a beaver and make raspberry flavor. This would come from cinnamon. It wouldn't come from a different type of animal. So it would be closely derived. So it's a little closer aligned with nature. But they're still using these flavorings because it's cheaper and they can actually stabilize it. And it's not in its raw form. So it's not cinnamon, it's natural cinnamon flavor. And so they can manipulate it and add it into different foods. And so that's the distinction there. And then finally, we've got natural organic flavors. So not ideal as a flavor. However, it is made with organic and other organic ingredients. So it needs to follow the same guidelines as organic foods. So that means it won't contain synthetic solvents or preservatives or GMOs. But some of the incidental additives might sneak in there because with organic foods, unfortunately, only 80% to 90% needs to be organic. So it's a slippery slope as well.
Yeah, I'm not saying anything.
Just to give you a little clarification around organic agriculture and organic certification. So one is the actual farming practice, right, where they look at soil health. So that's crop rotation, composting, not using synthetic fertilizers, the animal welfare, biodiversity. And the other is a certification process. So that's following a bunch of government regulations in order to be qualified as organically certified. There are lots of small local farms that practice organic methods, but they have opted not to go through the bureaucratic process of getting officially certified because there's so many hoops and so much money to put into that certification. And so getting to know local farmers is a really good way of connecting with our food. One thing that amuses me is if you've ever been to the grocery store, and my biggest experience was in Sunterra, is how many different eggs there are, right? So actually about 6 months ago or 8 months ago, saw an article. It was on LinkedIn that in the US, this was when they were talking about alleged bird flu, that a major grocery store chain had put limits on the number of carton of eggs that people could buy because of bird flu, and there was an egg shortage. So again, creating this fear without the knowledge of actually what's going on, which just was like, okay, another reason to get to know the farmer and know exactly where the eggs are coming from. There's eggs that are comfort coop, they're free run, they're free range, they're organic, they're omega-3, I don't even know what they are, but there's so many different eggs. Like, how do we choose, right? So if we look at what some of these things mean, did my research, and to give you a little version of what it is. So comfort coop eggs come from hens that are housed in small group settings with amenities such as perches and curtained off areas so they can lay their eggs. So that's a comfort coop. So they're making it a nice, comfortable, natural home for them. Free run comes from hens that live in a free run environment that promotes freedom to express natural behaviors like nesting, preening, wing flapping, perching, and running freely inside a well-maintained and safe atmosphere. So there's the fine print, inside. Yes, they can run around, but they're not in nature, then they're not getting any natural sunlight. Free range comes from hens that live in a free range environment that promotes, again, their well-being, and they have a safe atmosphere inside and, weather permitting, outside the barn. So they have a choice, but if they've been conditioned to feel safe inside, how often are they going to run outside? And who knows what these practices are like. When we went to try and visit one of these farms, there was no greenery. Like, the chickens were basically allowed to go in this very small area outside that was just dirt. And so maybe they can get some bugs, but highly unlikely. But at least they have the option for sunlight. And then organic eggs come from hens that live in the free range environment, and they eat 100% certified organic feed, and an annual organic audit is performed, right? So again, knowing the differences, it's like, it's still pretty confusing. So for us, we know a chicken farmer, we go and we buy our eggs from them, and we also know some local farmers here at the farmers markets, and we know what their practices are and what they're feeding their hens, so that we're making the best choices we can. And so know your chicken farmer, know what kind of food they're feeding them, because these things are important, because eggs have lots of delicious, nutritious fat. And Mother Nature made this beautiful egg with an egg yolk and an egg white, and we need to be able to eat all of it because that's how nature intended. And so, unfortunately, our medical system is silent on things when it actually really makes us sick, such as food and lifestyle. And it's not intentional, but doctors and nurses have less than 20 hours of training on nutrition, if that, right? So it's really sad that it's rare when you go to the doctor that they ask about your lifestyle and they talk about food and using food as medicine. Now, not to say that sometimes the doctor doesn't go there. In rare cases, they do, but most of the times they don't. And so the system is unfortunately designed this way, right? To write prescriptions versus use nature for our natural healing. And so these folks here, our farmers, are the ones that are doing all the hard work for us, right? Growing food is really, really important. Knowing where your food comes from is important. And all three of these pictures, these are personal friends of ours. They're farmers that live in Water Valley, Didsbury, and Camrose, and they all have different style farms, but they all practice regenerative style farming. And so we connect with them because that's their life. They've chosen to do that. And we're so grateful because we're able to get our food from them. And so what we need to look at is taking our power back, is having respect for ourselves and for knowing that we can eat local, real, whole food. We can know farmers and buy direct from them. We can grow our own food and, most importantly, do our own research. Me being skeptical and trying to find out what is real and what isn't is very important, because again, lots of these things are designed as a business, and health should not be a business, right? Food is a business where it's all about money, but we need to think about it as fueling ourselves so we can have the best life experience possible. And so a great resource for this that has been around for 25 years is the Weston A. Price Foundation. They are a nonprofit global organization, and they do their diligence and their research. And my husband and myself are chapter leaders in Calgary. And so we will set up booths at any type of food related venues or shows that we can help spread the word, because they have a ton of information all for free on their website. You can also join as a member and get their newsletter, which is essentially like a book every quarter with so much information. But they also have these principles, and so wanted to share a few of them with you today. One is to avoid refined and denatured food. Next, include animal foods, right? There's so much discussion about, vegetarianism, veganism, eating fake meat and all this. Those are actually fasts. Our bodies were designed to eat animal foods, and there is so much nutrition in animal products. Now, can you maintain a healthy lifestyle as a vegetarian? Sure. Have known some people to do that. However, you need to decide what's good for yourself, and knowing that animal foods is naturally part of our diets is very important, because it definitely impacts our health and well-being. We want to emphasize nutrient-dense foods like organ meats, animal fats, eggs, raw dairy, shellfish, fish oils, fish eggs, like these things that if we look back to ancient ancestry times of eating, were very prevalent. And they've just discarded them. But there's so much nutrient dense food that we are avoiding that we need to slowly bring back. And that's not to say that, expect you to sit down and eat organ meats for all your meals, but being able to look at, can we have a little bit of liver, once a week somehow? Can we get maybe some ground organ dehydrated stuff and add it to soups and stews to get some of that extra nutrition, right? Eating some animal foods raw, right? And cooking most of our plant foods. So lots of people will experience some discomfort with eating raw plant foods if they haven't eaten them for a while. Most plants are designed to create life. And so lots of them have coatings on them to protect them from predators. So they need to be cooked or slightly steamed in order for us to be able to metabolize them and process them a little bit easily, and also adding fat to help with that, right? Let's break a myth here. Fat does not make us fat. Sugar makes us fat. So saturated fat that is beautiful is like grass-fed butter, or any type of butter for that matter. Coconut oil, coconut butter, avocados, mangoes, they have like these beautiful fats in them that we need to continue to eat, because our brain is all covered in fat, right? So if we want to keep this thing sharp, we need to make sure that we're replenishing the fats in our body. And enjoying some lacto-fermented condiments and beverages. So that's really fancy for saying fermented foods, right? So things like kimchi, sauerkraut, yogurts that have no sugar in them. So no yogurts with fruit or sugar, because that kills some of the bacteria, right? It starts to feed on the sugar and the bacterial profile changes. So my hack is you get real yogurt. I like the thick stuff, so Greek yogurt. And then when I'm about to eat it, put some fruit in it, maybe some honey or maple syrup if the fruit doesn't satisfy my sweet craving, and mix it up and then eat it right when you're about to consume it. So what can we do? Well, we like to always offer people choices and say, why not grow a food item from seed? How lovely would it be to do that from home? Because when you plant one seed, do you just get one seed back? No, you get lots, right? If you grow tomatoes, or if you grow beans or cucumbers or lettuce or anything, you get so many seeds. And so how beautiful of an experience is it to see how easy is it to take something from seed, to grow it into a plant, and to have it fruit, and then to be able to eat that. And what great thing to do with the kids, right? In schools, in the classrooms, at home, it's beautiful to do for them to appreciate that. find a local farmer and visit their farm, right? We've got, I call them bougie farmers markets in Calgary now because they're so beautiful and they're focused on all these food vendors. But, you know, it's really rare to find a true farmer at them anymore because they have created it as a different business. But if you find a local farmer at a farmer's market and you find out where they are and ask them if you could come tour their farm, chances are they would love to have you there. And what a great experience to see and understand their farming practices. And this is a great one. Spring is hopefully coming soon when the snow melts, but find a plant in the area and check on it weekly. See what it's doing, see how it's growing. Get in touch with nature again and see how easy is it for nature to thrive, because we interfere so much with nature and we think we know better. We don't. Mother Nature knows best, right? Have you ever seen a plant growing through the concrete or out of a rock or the sidewalk, right? Nature always finds a way without our intervention. It's when we want to tell it what to do that it doesn't turn out as planned. And then we start interfering even more and playing Mother Nature and adding chemicals and fertilizers and things because we're not patient enough to see nature do her thing. So I will open the floor now for any questions. Or any comments. That was a lot of information, but there's so much to talk about in this topic and so many different areas to go. Yeah, if there's any questions, Crystal.
It was great. You talked so fast. I'm like,
I'm sorry.
No, it's good. We have such a short time over lunch for people, so it was great to have that. I think we're going to go to Wayne and then we'll come back and do questions. But I think there's a lot of things we could take from what you said, Eve, just for what we can do with kids in our programs to kind of expand their holistic approach to what they're eating and being more informed. But okay, we'll go to you, Wayne. And then we'll take some questions at the end if anybody has any questions.
Sounds good. I'm just going to take a quick minute to kind of talk a bit about how our platform can maybe help support work around nutrition. Just quickly, we have plenty of features on our platform to manage nutrition and day-to-day operations. We have tools to support staff for tracking, documenting, and communicating with families about nutrition. So some ways we can support this include our ability to track allergy and food preferences in the child's profile. The center can also plan for meals by filtering for food preferences, by room, by group. So a lot of ways to organize all this data you're tracking. The staff can also create food journals to track in details what was served and make any additional notes as needed. When it comes to communicating, you're able to create custom questions on our platform to ask family any questions you might have regarding nutrition for what you want to track. The center can also outline in the calendar meal plans that you lay out for the week. There's also instant messaging for parents to discuss any concerns around meals or provide any updates as needed. We also have many reports where you can review all the documentation being tracked around nutrition. These reports can, again, be easily filtered, organized, sorted, and you can also export them to view and identify any trends or patterns that you might be looking for around nutrition. We also do have many other reports around safety as well. And then lastly, we have instant messaging and emails for staff where it's easy to communicate any challenges and updates that might occur throughout the day. We have history of everything through messaging, journals, profiles, custom questions that can all be pulled quite handily for review and improvements at the center. And those are all my slides. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. All right, so we covered a lot, I feel like, today. If there's any questions, I think we'll just open it up. You have Eve here and Wayne and myself. Can ask any kind of questions. Maybe you're struggling with what parents are sending to daycare for their child to eat for the day, and you're wondering, like, how do I educate my family so that the children actually have a proper nutritious meal to eat during the day, and then, you know, hopefully they're better supported and regulated for the rest of their day and their time in care. I know that I have seen a few really amazing food programs recently from some centers in BC where they had parents come in and do like a cooking night with their chef in their kitchen, and they talked about nutrition and how it was so important for the age groups of the kids they had. I know that would be something that, you know, if you're looking at how you bring value to your program, maybe how you get parents to buy into your food program, that would be a great service as well, and something Eve could likely support you with. Yeah, any questions? Anything, anybody want to say anything before we wrap up?
Crystal, just to blend with you there while people are thinking of questions, recently learned that in BC, there's a legislation that came in that said that X percentage, forget the percentage of food, needs to come from local farms in schools. And so, wow, what a great precedent to set in terms of if we could do that here. And there's so many food programs where, you know, what happens with like, can we look at creating relationships with farms? Can we, right, like with their produce? Can we do any types of fundraisers, right? Like instead of selling Girl Guide cookies, sugar in a box, could we sell plants? Can we sell compost, right? Is there different creative ways that we could get more in touch and get the kids involved as well in nature? Those would be really fun to explore.
Absolutely. And even your graphic you had with the, you know, what if you could do one thing, like go check on a plant. I mean, most of us are outside doing walks with our children or in our playgrounds. Like maybe that's something you just incorporate as soon as the snow melts, to find, you know, that plant and check on it, just having that conversation and changing kind of the dialogue with your younger children into more of a holistic mindset that'll carry on as they get older too. Or I know we've often grown plants in our center, and I mean, check with Alberta health regulations, you guys, before you do any of this, but we've had indoor tower gardens and different things where the kids grew lettuce and herbs. And yeah, I mean, there's just so engaged with that. Yeah, someone's asking if we could get connected with some local farmers. Sure, I can put a list together for you guys following up. We have some great resources that'll be sent out following these lunch and learns, so we can add that to you to it for you as well. But yeah, I mean, it's I think just always kind of thinking about what you're teaching and what you're setting people and our little ones up for as they get older, and trying to do better. Like you had said, you know, we're learning, we have the ability to learn so much, and how do we do better as we get going here, you know, with nutrition, with everything. I mean, some of the stuff you see in school lunches or lunch boxes is a lot to take, and then you have a little person that's all they have for the whole day to keep them going too, which
well, in which we know doesn't satiate them, so then they're hungry, right? Because it doesn't have the right blend of nutrients in it. And I mean, what a fun thing to do in school is to grow a little herb garden, right? Super easy, if that's possible, grow a little herb garden and then make a little compound butter, right? So bring in some butter once the herbs are done, chop them up, mix them with the butter, add some salt, and then you've got like this beautiful compound butter, for example, right? It would be my dream if, you know, we could teach kids in schools, have more of a food program where they actually get to make bread, right? Learning how to actually knead bread, have a sourdough starter, have it, you know, from the raw state. And then, you know, we can make pizza, or you could make, you know, if you want junk food, my rule is if you want it, you make it from scratch, right? It's going to be way better.
Totally. Yeah. I think it's just taking those one little things that you do and kind of building on it. So it's not a full overhaul of your food program, but like you're looking at, you know, one menu change you could change for next month that, you know, whether it's like how you're getting the eggs now that, you know, are you picking like a local farmer for eggs for your center, or, you know, what small kind of shifts could you do? Maybe it's a parents' night to talk to them about nutrition and kind of build that bridge home so that they're doing better at home for their kids too. But yeah, it's a lot of information. Yeah, baby. Yeah, exactly. You have to make it manageable, right? So
absolutely, one thing at a time, little tiny step.
Exactly. But yeah, if we don't have any other questions, I think we can wrap up for today, and we'll follow up like we always do with the recording of the session. We'll follow up with Eve's contact in case you guys want to reach out and look at what school programs that she can offer for your centers or your families. And then, you know, you could look at maybe if you're interested in how you manage this and how you can kind of communicate it and manage your nutrition system in your center, you could reach out to Wayne and see how much Child Friendly can support you with that and all the new programs and features that they're rolling out. And other than that, we will see everybody in May. We're going to be talking about a spring reset to your staffing in May, which will be fun for all of us who maybe are struggling with some stress and staffing issues. We're going to talk about what we can do and how we can support you in that. But thank you so much, Eve, for coming today and giving us your time. And thank you everybody else who joined us over lunch. And I hope to see you back here in May.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Crystal.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Eve. Have a
Thanks for
great day.
stopping by.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Bye, Wayne.
Thank you.